There was once a man who, as a child, had heard that beautiful story about how God tested Abraham and how he withstood the test, kept the faith, and received a son a second time, contrary to expectation. When the man became older, he read the same story with even greater admiration, for life had separated what had been united in the child's pious simplicity. Indeed, the older he became, the more often his thoughts turned to that story. His enthusiasm became stronger and stronger, and yet he could understand the story less and less. And finally, he forgot everything else because of it. His soul had only one wish, to see Abraham, one longing to have been a witness to that event. His desire was not to see the beautiful regions of the Far East, not the earthly splendor of the Promised Land, not the God-fearing married couple whose old age God had blessed, not the venerable figure of the aged patriarch, not the vigorous youth of Isaac bestowed by God. It would not have mattered to him if the same thing had taken place on a barren heath. His longing was to accompany them on the 3-day journey when Abraham rode with sorrow before him and Isaac by his side. His wish was to be present at the hour when Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw Mount Moriah in the distance, the hour he left the asses behind and went up the mountain alone with Isaac. For what engrossed him was not the artistic weave of the imagination, but the shudder of the thought. The man was not a thinker. He felt no need to go beyond faith. It seemed to him that it must be the greatest glory to be remembered as its father, and an enviable lot to possess faith, even if no one knew it. The man was not a learned exegete. He did not know Hebrew. Had he known Hebrew, then perhaps he would easily have understood the story of Abraham. 1. And God tested Abraham and said to him, "Take Isaac, your only son, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering upon a mount that I will show you." It was an early morning. Abraham rose early. He had the asses saddled and left his tent, taking Isaac with him. But Sarah looked out the window after them as they went down through the valley until she could see them no more. They rode silently for 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, Abraham still did not say a word, but lifted up his eyes and saw Mount Moriah in the distance. He left the servant boys behind and went up to the mountain alone, leading Isaac by the hand. But Abraham said to himself, "I will not conceal from Isaac where his path is taking him." He stood still and laid his hand upon Isaac's head for a blessing, and Isaac bowed to receive it. And Abraham's countenance was paternal, his gaze was gentle, his speech exhortatory. But Isaac could not understand him. His soul could not be uplifted. He embraced Abraham's knees. He pleaded at his feet. He begged for his young life, for his fair hopes. He recalled the joy in Abraham's house. He recalled the sorrow and the solitude. Then Abraham raised the boy up and walked along holding his hand, and his words were full of comfort and exhortation. But Isaac could not understand him. He climbed Mount Moriah, but Isaac understood him not. Then he turned away from Isaac a moment. But when Isaac saw Abraham's countenance once again, it was changed. His eyes were wild, his appearance a fright to behold. He seized Isaac by the chest, threw him to the ground, and said, "Foolish boy, do you believe I am your father? I am an idolater. Do you believe this is God's command? No, it is my desire." Then Isaac trembled and cried out in his anguish, "God in heaven, have mercy on me. God of Abraham, have mercy on me. If I have no father on earth, then you be my father." But Abraham murmured under his breath to himself, "Lord in heaven, I thank you. It is surely better for him to believe I am a monster than to lose faith in you." When the child is to be weaned, the mother blackens her breast, for it would indeed be a shame for the breast to look delightful when the child must not have it. So the child believes that the breast is changed, but the mother is the same. Her gaze is loving and tender as always. Fortunate the one who did not need more frightening measures to wean the child. 2. It was an early morning. Abraham rose early. He remembered Sarah, the bride of his old age, and Sarah kissed Isaac, who took away her disgrace, who was her pride, her hope for all generations. Then they rode silently along the way, and Abraham's eyes were fastened upon the ground until the fourth day, when he lifted up his eyes and saw Mount Moriah far away, but his eyes turned again toward the ground. Silently he arranged the firewood and bound Isaac. Silently he drew the knife. Then he saw the ram that God had chosen. He sacrificed it and went home. From that day on, Abraham became old. He could not forget that God had demanded this of him. Isaac flourished as before, but Abraham's eyes were darkened. He saw joy no more. When the child has grown larger and is to be weaned, the mother covers her breast in a maidenly manner, so the child no longer has a mother. Fortunate the child who did not lose its mother in some other way. 3. In an early morning, Abraham rose. He kissed Sarah, the young mother, and Sarah kissed Isaac, her delight, her joy at all times. And Abraham rode pensively along the way. He thought of Hagar and the son whom he turned out into the desert. He climbed Mount Moriah. He drew the knife. It was a quiet evening when Abraham rode out alone, and he rode to Mount Moriah. He threw himself upon his face. He begged God to forgive his sin, that he had been willing to sacrifice Isaac, that the father had forgotten his duty toward the son. More than once he rode his lonely trail, but found no peace of mind. He could not comprehend that it was a sin to have been willing to sacrifice to God the best he owned, that for which he himself would gladly have laid down his life many times. And if it were a sin, if he had not loved Isaac in this way, then he could not understand how it could be forgiven, for what sin was more grievous? When a child is to be weaned, the mother too is not without sorrow that she and the child are more and more to be parted, that the child who first lay beneath her heart, yet later reposed upon her breast, will not be so close any more. Thus together they mourn this brief sorrow. Fortunate the one who kept the child so close and did not need to sorrow more. It was an early morning. Everything was ready for the journey in Abraham's house. He took leave of Sarah, and the faithful servant Eliezer saw him out along the road until he turned back again. They rode together in harmony, Abraham and Isaac, until they came to Mount Moriah. Yet Abraham calmly and gently prepared everything for the sacrifice. But as he turned away and drew the knife, Isaac saw that Abraham's left hand was clenched in despair, that a shudder went through his body. But Abraham drew the knife. Then they returned home again, and Sarah hurried to meet them. But Isaac had lost faith. Never a word is spoken about this in the world. Isaac never spoke to any person about what he had seen, and Abraham did not suspect that anyone had seen it. When the child is to be weaned, the mother has more solid food on hand so the child will not perish. Fortunate the one who has this stronger nourishment handy. In these and many similar ways, that man of whom we speak pondered over this event. Every time he returned home from a pilgrimage to Mount Moriah, he collapsed from fatigue, clasped his hands, and said, "Surely no one was as great as Abraham. Who is able to understand him?"